Yes. Good morning and a warm welcome to all. My name is Huay, Managing Director at the World Economic Forum, and I head up the Center for Nature and Climate. This year's annual meeting is happening in challenging times, coupled with extreme weather events affecting the lives of many people around the world. And as I speak, India and Pakistan are experiencing extreme high temperatures, while California and France are facing severe drought. We need to massively scale up, speed up, and bring down the costs of climate solutions, both nature-based and technological innovations. The International Energy Agency has estimated that around half of the emissions reductions needed will come from technologies that have not yet reached maturity. And this is why in November last year at COP26, with support from US President Biden, the State Department, led by Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, together with the World Economic Forum, launched the First Movers Coalition. The coalition seeks to create a marketplace for technologies and solutions that can accelerate the energy transition. Companies who join the coalition commit to buy materials, transportation services, and fuels that are critical for emissions reductions, consistent with science-based targets for net zero. We focus on the sectors where transition is especially difficult, such as steel, cement, aviation, shipping, and together this accounts for 30% of global emissions. And today, I'm very pleased to be here because we are excited to announce an expansion of the coalition in 3 areas. 1, increase in number of companies making purchasing commitments. 2, expansion of government partners to the effort. And 3, an increase in the number of sectors that will be covered by these purchasing commitments. I will now invite each of the panelists to speak, and I'll ask them to kindly keep their comments to within 3 minutes so that we can leave some time for questions. Secretary Kerry, if I may start with you first. You have been personally involved in championing this coalition, and I want to thank you for your leadership in this. Why is this so important?
Thank you, Huay, and thank you to all of the folks who are up here who are leaders in this effort, representing extraordinary companies. And a very important thank you to Bill Gates, who is our primary implementation partner and who helped from the very beginning to give this the sense of importance that it ought to have. I also want to thank the World Economic Forum for partnering with us on this. I think it is fair to say that this is the flagship global public-private partnership initiative at this moment for deep decarbonization. And we all understand the urgency which grows by the day. What this initiative is geared to do is what Bill has set out to do with Breakthrough Energy, which is breakthrough, bring to the forefront of American enterprise and global enterprise, every country in the world, every business in the world, an embrace of the reality that we must bring critical technologies to scale much more rapidly than we are today. We have technologies, we know how to do certain things, but the market has to begin to embrace that. It did through a government signal on vaccines. And we created the vaccines because people knew there was a purchaser there. We did the same thing with respect to space flight. We said we're going to buy the capacity, and we bought the capacity, and now there's private space flight. The same thing can happen here. This is a demand signal, one of the biggest demand signals that we could send. And so today, the First Movers Initiative leaps from the 35 initial companies that came to the table to 55 companies, with additions of major corporations, FedEx, Ford Motor Company, others. They're all in the press release, and time is short, and I want to try to get where we need to go here. But we welcome these companies. They represent almost $9 trillion of global worth. That is 10% of the Fortune 2000. It represents in total economic enterprise about 50% of global GDP, has now committed to this First Movers Coalition. And so today, with the additional companies, people are committing to buy 10% of a particular product, like green steel or cement. And in addition, shippers, for instance, are agreeing that they're going to build carbon-free ships now, even though that may be more expensive in the beginning. It's going to help to create the demand signal for the market. We're also expanding beyond the initial 4 sections of, that we defined initially, embracing now carbon dioxide removal and new technologies. Microsoft and Google, along with Salesforce, have made a $500 million commitment to purchase advanced carbon dioxide removal technologies by 2030. And we're talking about durable and scalable removal processes that could have a span of storage for about 1,000 years or so or more. And we're also launching in aluminum. And what this initiative has done is targeted the toughest sectors of economies, which people said were most difficult to decarbonize, like shipping, aviation, cement, aluminum. And now with direct carbon removal, we're also adding aluminum to the list of those categories where special initiatives are going to be taken. And under the commitment, companies are going to commit to purchase 10% of their aluminum by 2030 from plants that are cleaner than any plants that we have in existence today. And the First Mover Coalition is mobilizing enormous purchasing power now to induce investment in brand new technologies that could come to market. Third, we have brought on new government partners, and this is important. Sweden, India, Japan, Norway, Italy, the UK, Singapore, Denmark, because countries can begin to implement policies that augment each of the sectors that we just talked about and can accelerate the development of those technologies. There are all kinds of things: tax policy, public policy, incentives, various budget, concessionary funding. All of those things will excite the private sector to be able to embrace the goals here. So we're excited about it. In just 6 months' time, since we launched, companies are now making real purchases. An example, one partner, DHL, has purchased 12 electric airplanes to enter service by 2025. Dalmia Cement is launching a pilot electric truck project in India. And Fortescue and Maersk are buying zero-carbon ships. That's the example that we need to set, and everyone up here is committed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry. And next, Bill, can you tell us why you decided to team up with the First Movers Coalition?
Well, solving climate change is harder than any problem mankind has ever solved. It's the entire physical economy. A great reminder of that is the latest Václav Smil book called How the World Really Works, with an emphasis on really, that goes through the scale of things that need to change. You know, back in 2015, there wasn't a lot happening. We got the Paris Accords, but the R&D budgets weren't high enough. The venture funding wasn't there. The innovative ideas weren't moving fast enough, and the private sector was not engaged. And the First Movers Coalition is about engaging the private sector, particularly on the demand side. So many of the green products carry a price premium, and the way you get rid of that is you scale up the production. That happened with solar panels, it happened with wind, it happened with lithium ion. We have about a dozen additional technologies, including things like green hydrogen, that we need to reprise that. And so a combination of policies, including tax credits, private sector demand, teaming up these small companies that have great ideas with these companies that are willing to buy, you know, that is the path forward. I'd say in the last 4 years, the progress of the innovative companies that Breakthrough Energy and others have been providing funding to has been way better than I expected. And so the opportunity now to bootstrap green steel, bootstrap green cement, bootstrap green aviation, it's stronger than ever. So the FMC work, brings companies and governments into this effort. We have a specific project funding vehicle called Breakthrough Energy Catalyst that'll actually be making its first few grants this year. And even though these projects are often government-driven, making sure the right technology is picked, making sure they're done efficiently, it's worth having that private sector seat at the table to help those projects achieve those cost reductions. So today's a great milestone in a very difficult long-term project.
Thank you, Bill. And Ruth, Google has been a front runner in the climate space. You have plans and strategies since 15 years ago. Can you tell us more about what are your commitments under the First Movers Coalition?
Absolutely, thank you. It's terrific to be here. So sustainability has been core to everything we do. We have a lot of efforts really across the time spectrum. We're doing things with both immediate impact and also with longer term impact. First, we made a commitment by year-end 2022. This year, we would help 1 billion people take action to live more sustainably, and we're doing that with data in search and with maps. So, for example, when you go on Google Maps, you'll get the greenest route. Second, with our enterprise customers, we have this wonderful asset, Google Earth Engine. We've mapped the planet, and when you combine that with data analytics and AI, we can help companies look through their supply chain. So, for example, we're working with Unilever, which wants to make sure it can see through its supply chain to mitigate any risks around deforestation. And then third, we made a commitment within our own operations. We set a goal to be net zero by 2030 through our operations and value chain, and that also includes 24/7 carbon-free energy for all of our data centers and our offices. And in fact, we're already running 5 data centers, 90% on carbon-free energy. The critical point, and it's already been said today, no one entity can do this alone, and there's just real impact and power in public-private collaboration. We do believe it's the only way to solve the climate crisis, and we think the First Movers Coalition is absolutely critical here, plays a key role. And we do think technology innovation is an important part of really getting the planet to net zero. So we view FMC as very exciting because it's creating this forum for companies to commit to purchase new solutions in these hard-to-abate areas, hard sectors. And in our view, that will help accelerate innovation by reducing risk for suppliers and by incentivizing commercialization. And the area that we're focused on for FMC is carbon dioxide removal. We recently announced a $200 million commitment to an unprecedented corporate consortium. It's called Frontier. And that led to $925 million in advanced market commitments to purchase carbon removal over the next 8 years. We have seen that having clarity and certainty about demand does catalyze growth in markets. We did this back in 2012. We committed that we would match 100% of our energy consumption with renewables. With that demand, that long-term demand order out there, it increased supply, and we were able to hit our commitment early by 2017. So we're very excited about this approach. We do believe it has the opportunity to catalyze real change, and are very grateful to Secretary Kerry and the Forum for really bringing us all together and getting us moving. Time is of the essence.
Thank you, Ruth. And now I want to go to Marc. Salesforce is already at net zero emissions across your entire value chain. What do you hope to achieve with the First Movers Coalition?
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you for your leadership of our whole Nature Center, so thank you. And thank you as well to Secretary Kerry for his tremendous leadership globally and everything that is going on. I'm so excited about what we've heard and seen and witnessed and taken action on just in the last 2 days. We're witnessing really the emergence of a new environmental capitalism. This environmental capitalism, this is something that I personally so badly want to see every company becoming part of this movement. Number one, we're all becoming net zero. Salesforce is already net zero and fully renewable today. This is extremely important to us. Google has been an incredible visionary and leader in this area. We're so fortunate to be able to partner with them. And I'll tell you that what that means is we all have to continue to reduce our emissions. There's no substitute for that. And then we need these new solutions. And that's why FMC is so important. FMC is so important, and why we're joining this multi-$100 million commitment is because we are very much energizing this ecopreneur revolution. This idea that there's so many exciting new technologies that you've seen created, companies that are getting funded by these next generation energy consortiums, things we could have never thought of even maybe just 3, 4, 5 years ago that we can put into action today, and that we are. I think it's also important not only to really say that we're becoming net zero today, but we must also sequester 200 gigatons of carbon right now. That is why 2 years ago we were here and we introduced 1 trillion trees. 1 trillion trees, which is now we've turned over after founding it to the World Economic Forum, has just had tremendous success, and we can see a clear trajectory to our goal of the ability to conserve and plant 1 trillion trees by 2030. Yesterday, I am so grateful to Minister Huay, who came here from Beijing and committed to not only join trillion trees, but 70 billion trees, way beyond our expectation. So important because China represents 25% of all the trees on the planet. And also so grateful as well to the United States government and President Biden, who through the Replant Act, which was part of our recent infrastructure bill, committed $8 billion to planting and conserving trees in the United States. And 65 major U.S. companies who have joined us as part of American Foresters efforts, that's 35 billion trees. So net zero, new solutions, sequestering the carbon that's there, and igniting this ecopreneur revolution that I think, we've seen. We have the #1 entrepreneur in the world right here, down sitting 2 steps from me. When he went into technology, he was excited and thrilled about technology and inspired people like me to follow him. Today, I think that both of us look at the environmental world and say, wow, if we were starting over today, we'd go into this environmental technology and we would be ecopreneurs, not tech entrepreneurs. We saw this uplink network that Salesforce and Deloitte created and launched here in 2020 of ecopreneurs, now has 30,000 of these ecopreneurs. That is so exciting. So thank you. I'm so grateful to you, to the WEF, and John, thank you for your global leadership, and Bill, thank you for everything that you're doing. And yes, let's all create this incredible new environmental capitalism.
Thank you, Marc. Minister Mikael, you're one of the new government partners for the coalition. Can you give us the government perspective and what are your ambitions for the coalition?
Yes, thank you. Sweden is committed to be a first mover country. We want to be the first fossil-free welfare nation on the planet. We're on track to our national goals on to 2030, but we have to do more to actually meet our goals on 2045, net zero emissions, and then negative emissions. Therefore, today we're proud to join the First Mover Coalition as a government partner, but also to take place in the steering committee. We're also proud of the 4 companies that was actually founding partners of the First Mover Coalition. Many of them has been mentioned as an example of how we can go about to do the transition. Today we see a green revolution in industry in Sweden. In 2020, the first global pilot plant for fossil-free steel production was launched in Luleå, in northern part of Sweden. This is one of the biggest technological shifts in steel manufacturing in 1,000 years, and lay the foundation for a fossil-free steel production globally. It puts Sweden in a position as an early leader in the use of fossil-free hydrogen. Government's financial support from the industrial leap has played a central role in enabling investments. But we see the investments in energy, in mining, in battery production. So we see a revolution. 25,000 new jobs are creating the next 5 years in northern part of Sweden. Traditional industries transforming. Volvo already produced their first fossil-free carrier for mining industries of the fossil-free steel. So this is a revolution going on. So Sweden is committed. We want to see more Swedish companies getting on board, but we also hope that Sweden can serve as an example, show the world that it is possible to do the transformation.
Thank you, Minister. And last but not least, Brett, could you tell us more about Microsoft's plans for the first movers?
Well, yes, first of all, thank you all. It's great to be here. Thank you, Secretary Kerry, for your leadership. And I guess you're looking at the second joiners of the first movers. And I have to admit that when I was in Glasgow, I saw the meeting of the first movers taking place, and I turned to our team and I said, why aren't we in that meeting? So thank you for giving us the opportunity. It's going to take a long group and many years to work together. It's also just fantastic to be here, with Ruth and Marc, and you see the tech sector working together, even though every day we do a lot to compete with each other, but we're really sitting on the same side of history. And I think we're sitting on the side of a table that will continue to grow. Let me just say a moment about carbon dioxide removal, CDR. Why does that matter? Well, first, if you read Bill's book or you just listen to the conversation, it's always about net zero. We have to drive a massive reduction in emissions, but there is still going to be carbon that is emitted, and it needs to be balanced with carbon that is removed so that you get to net zero. And we have a lot of work to do in both areas. At Microsoft, on the one hand, we're proud of the fact that during the last 2 years, we contracted for 2.8 million tons of carbon removal. But there's some challenges with that. First of all, when you look at the scale that will be necessary, this is like dropping 4 drips of water in the Pacific Ocean. It's almost nothing. But the other thing I have to admit is one of the great fringe benefits of working at Microsoft is you get free tuition at the Bill Gates School of Climate Science. So I would go over and visit with Bill a couple of miles away, and I would describe to him what we were doing, and he would look at me and he would say, that is not good enough. And he would basically say it for 2 reasons. One is he would say, it's not durable. We need to get carbon out of the environment, and we need to keep it out of the environment for at least 1,000 years. So if you look at the definition today of durable removal that this coalition is advancing, it is based on precisely that standard. And the second bill would say is it needs to be scalable, and it won't be scalable unless 2 other conditions are met. One is it's going to take real technology innovation. And second, perhaps most of all, we need to build a market, because that's the only way things ultimately will scale. And that's what Google and Salesforce and Microsoft today together are committing to do, to spend a substantial amount of money, $500 million by 2030, on durable removal that by definition will require the use of new technology with large amounts, at least 1 million tons for each of us. I think we're going to easily surpass that. But really, this is about building a market and validating the market so it can take off and grow.
Thank you. We are doing well on time. 5 minutes remaining. What we'll do is we'll take 2 or 3 questions from the floor, and then I'll open up to the panelists to respond.
From the press, right?
Yes, from the media. Yeah.
From the media.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Could you identify yourself as well?
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. Europe correspondent from Shanghai Media Group. I have 2 questions. The first question is, what is the ultimate goal of the First Movers Coalition? It's like how many companies do we want to involve in the coalition? Of course, I know that the best prospect will be all First Movers Coalition to All Movers Coalition, but like how influential would this coalition be? And second question, as Marc just mentioned, that you've met Huay yesterday. So we want to know if you guys heard any interest from the public sector and private sectors from China. Thank you very much.
You. Maybe we can take one more question. Yes. Yes. This gentleman.
Peter Holmescott from the Australian Financial Review. Could someone say something that you would say to the nations who haven't joined yet? Say something like to a country like Australia, what would you say?
And maybe one more from the lady behind.
This is from Caixin Media China. So I have a question for Mr. Kerry about yesterday. You have a good talk with Ms. Xie, and also mentioned that you met Xie yesterday. And I want to know, because nowadays people say this cooperation in climate between China and US is a good sign of this two countries' relationship. So what does Mr. Kerry think about this expectation from outside? And do you think it's opportunity, not just climate, but also for other sides of between China and the US? Thank you.
Thank you. One more? Yeah, just one more. And then we will invite responses.
Hi, I'm Peter Brigham, the AP's Global Climate and Environment News Director. A question for the coalition: if down the road you expect to add, I don't know, companies that actually work towards reducing emissions, not just burying emissions, in carbon capture, but kind of going beyond and looking at consumption and just trying to get a better sense of that.
Cool, thank you. Secretary Kerry, would you like to respond?
Well, the answer is we want as many companies as humanly possible so that we create a critical mass, which then doesn't necessitate a first mover anymore. It's very simple. But I can't tell you what that level is going to be because, as Bill will tell you, and everybody has underscored, this is tough. It's doable. And the IEA made it clear that after we left Glasgow, with 65% of global GDP committed to plans that legitimately hold the Earth's temperature increase at 1.5 degrees, then we have to bring the other 35% on. These technology steps that everybody is taking here will encourage and make it easier for those other countries and companies to be able to make the decision to come on. The marketplace is going to do this. It's not going to happen by government decree. It's not going to happen just because these companies are here. It's going to happen because people are going to see there's a demand for this. Citizens all around the world want a better life. They want clean air. They don't want drought and fires and floods and storms and the threat of massive sea level rise and so forth. And that's the course we're on right now. So the greatest disruptor of business will be climate crisis if we don't move fast enough. And the greatest risk for a business is not the risk of putting their money into this, it's the risk that comes with not doing enough, with not investing. So that's our goal, to keep pushing this as hard as we can. Now, with respect to Australia, of course we want Australia to come on board. And we're very hopeful. We've worked with the Morrison government. We now look forward to working with the new government. And hopefully they will join and become a country that is part of our country effort here, as well as other initiatives. On Minister Xie, we had a very good meeting. I mean, Minister Xie and I have known each other for 25 years or plus. We call each other friends because we are. And our countries have differences. We both know that. We acknowledge it and acknowledge it publicly. But President Biden and President Xi both said a year and a half ago that they were committed to make sure that climate is recognized, the climate crisis is recognized for what it is. It's not a bilateral issue. It is a multilateral, global, universal, existential issue for every country and every person on the planet. It has no political labels. Everything we are doing is driven by mathematics and physics. And the scientists who are warning us and telling us and interpreting the math and the physics to give us a sense in layperson terms of what we have to do. And what we have to do is reduce emissions many times faster than we are today. We're still not on the course we promised we would be. The IEA said if we do everything we promised to do in Glasgow, we could be at 1.8 degrees by 2050. Well, we're not doing everything we said yet. But this initiative and others are going to kick everybody into higher gear. And I know Maybe we could get, Bill and a few of the folks out of the tech world to speak for a moment about the amazing things that are beginning to happen. We have technologies. Maybe 50% of the technologies we need, though, while we have them, we have to bring them to scale. They have to be put into demonstration. They have to work through a process. Bill himself is building a new design nuclear plant in Wyoming. And that's going to take 4 or 5 years. But we have to go through that process. Finally, Minister Xi and I are going to meet in Berlin tomorrow, and we will continue our process of trying to find a way forward. Why is that so important? Because China represents 28% to 30% of all the emissions, and we, the United States, represent 10 to 15. So together, we bear an enormous responsibility to move faster and to be leaders in this initiative, which is why President Biden has committed the diplomacy of our nation as well as money. And we're looking for more, as you all know, from the United States Congress, and hopefully we will get there too.
Thank you. I think we're at time, and thank you all for your audience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great.